Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Demola Abbas is a professor of international law and global affairs expert. He joins us this morning to weigh in on some of the scenes or scenarios playing themselves out in the polity. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, the president a couple of days ago did say when he met with governors from his party that he likes votes to count. He wants a free and fair elections. He's not going to influence anything. And as such, perhaps they should internalize that as much as they can. Now, having said that to them, of course, they run with it to whatever extent. How should we, the people, internalize that?
Well, thank you very much once again. Well, it's a very interesting comment. I mean, to put it in the words of the president, he said he will allow people to vote for who they want. And on the one hand, it's very reassuring for the government to say that, for the president to say that. But on the other hand, it's very worrisome too. Because you begin to ask yourself, does that mean that A, they've not been allowing people's votes to count in the past? Or number two, that the president has to allow, that is exact word, I'm not using, that's what he said, that he will allow people's vote to count. As if it is not people's right for them to vote for who they want to vote to. I think we've got to this level of very terrible mediocrity in Nigeria in our political life, that it will take the president to assure the nation that I will not interfere with the election. I won't allow people, and to again to quote him, he said, I am not going to allow Nigerians to be humiliated and intimidated by people's personal resources and people who are in position of power. Again, you begin to wonder. That is before we even begin to, because we have to know what we are internalizing as a citizenry. You begin to wonder, okay, you don't want Nigeria to be humiliated. We're already humiliated anyway, to be honest with you. You don't say you don't want Nigerians to be humiliated by simply allowing them to be voted for. You already humiliate Nigerians by not even making the process fair enough for them to put people through that they could actually vote for. Because by the time you say you are guaranteed their vote to count, it's already a fait accompli. Let me give you an example. We are in a situation in which humongous amount of money is required for people to pick nomination forms. So you already technically disenfranchise people at that level. So whoever they are voting for at the election might not be the person they actually wanted to. And this is not a very theoretical thing. But all that be the case, at least we are assured that at least the government will not, or by the word of the president, will not sit by when the police, the military, whatever apparatus of the state they've been using in the past to intimidate people will run amok.
Well, perhaps that speaks to a need to dig into the past or some historical antecedents to that statement. I will not allow, to, as you quote the president as saying. Where could that have come from? This is our fourth republic. Okay, this is the longest republic we've had ever. So where could that statement have come from?
Well, that's a very important question, Ayo, because if you go back to the First Republic in the 60s, we woke up suddenly one day and we found the premier of a region saying that no matter what you do, we will win this election. That even if you don't vote for us, stones will vote for us. In other words, it began long ago when people in power began to assert very criminal things in our body politic to make it clear to the citizenry that we are just going to the poll just to fulfill our righteousness. We don't really care about your vote. Look, to put it in the words of one of the oldies of those days, I'm talking about SLA Akintola, that the Yorubas would call SLA Akintola in those days. He said, Atikojebolo shalowo okubaba in Etiobo. You know that we've put the ring in the finger of the whatever. Let's see who's going to remove it. In other words, I am in power. Let me see who's going to remove me. It was the utmost disregard for the political process. So
as far back as the First Republic.
60s. I'm not even going back to the 50s, the Constitutional Conference and this and that, in which a lot of things were done. But I'm just limiting to when we even got independence. And we began to govern ourselves. And fast forward to 1979. I don't want to go into the charade that was by Shagari's administration, the legendary, vote buying. And vote buying started long before Shagari administration, make no mistake, in different format, albeit. So, if you want to go back into that story, well, you will say yes, the President Muhammadu Buhari was being historical by saying that. He was reflecting on what was going on, but that what was going on also affected his own government, the one that brought him to power. Because for you to say you will not allow it, actually got me very, very worried. But I don't want to spend too much time.
If we dug into our, yet again, very recent past, you recall when the president was congratulating the flag bearer of the party, he said he was confident he was going to hand over to him. Is there a change somewhere along the mix, perhaps in the realization that the president is not returning? He has elapsed his tenure, and as such, he's now saying that, look, I'll allow the process, to take its course. And then can we also wait, with the recent off-cycle elections in Osun and Ekiti?
Well, thank you very much. I think that's a very important question. Look, I absolutely hate to second-guess politicians. I don't think it would be a lifetime job for somebody to second-guess the best of politicians in the world. Then it would take an eternity to second-guess a Nigerian politician, basically. Because at the moment they say, I will not, I am reading I will. They like to deny what they want to do. They start with denying. So I think it's become their kind of strategy. But look, there are so many rumors about Buhari's body language. When you don't speak, people look at your body language. And Buhari is not the one that speaks a lot anyway. I don't know why anybody can even read his body language. About his body language, who he supported during the primaries and all this stuff, back and forth. I mean, I just took myself out of it. But what was important, that eventually somebody emerged from that party. Whether the presidency supported him or not, I don't care. But at least through whatever system we have now, no matter how defective, somebody
has emerged.
So it behoves on the president and the rest of the party, obviously, to support that person. But what he said a few days ago also, was that he will only support people who have not taken
party to court.
Again, that's very dangerous. Constitutionally, you're right if you feel aggrieved. In a rule of law country, to go to court, if I feel cheated, why can't I go to court? So nitpicking that I'm not going to support somebody who has taken party to court is like saying, okay, if you have lost, regardless of whether you are cheated out, I don't care. But if you have lost, then suddenly you shouldn't, then the question is what happens to democracy? What happens to the constitutional right of that particular person?
Prof, if looking through, just listening to, all of this, and there seems to be a certain thread, a narrative, because, the world knows, former President Obama said it, that in Africa we have strong men, not institutions, as it were, and how you've traced it over time, and then even not this president, we've seen previous presidents, and how even within their parties, when they're feuding, a president can come in who they say is the leader of their party. If he takes a certain stance, everybody is supposed to be, you all align yourself, you shape up or you shape out, as it were. And in this case, aren't we, in a manner of speaking, playing the ostrich here? Because this is our reality. If a president says, I will allow free and fair elections, my elections is not worth this, so go out there and do certain things. Even look at within his party. Before the candidate merged, they tried to bring somebody else in the name of the president. And all of that leads to that position wielding all that power. Isn't that our own reality given our democracy or not?
Absolutely, you are right. Absolutely, yes. That is our reality. And there's no point in running away from that unless you just want to be a theoretician at the end of that has no reality to the bear. But look, I'm happy you mentioned the question of, building strong men in Africa and not strong institutions, which I think in your last segment of the interview you are referring to with the last speaker. That is one of the tragedies of the Nigerian political system. Even if we accept it today as our reality, we shouldn't. And we should start working, our way out of that. Look, let me go back to when Mandela was negotiating. When he was in prison in South Africa, when he was negotiating with the government representatives, I remember very well, the Minister for Justice then, Kobe Kotese was negotiating with him on behalf of the president and the Minister for Justice, and the two of them at that point in time. Now, something happened, if you remember. Mandela did not inform his colleagues in the prison. They didn't inform the ANC because he was very worried that if he informed his colleagues, Sesulu and Co, in prison, that was going to be negotiating, they might shoot him down. But then he knew what he wanted to do. But what did he do? Very cleverly, when he met with the representative of the president, he said, I am not speaking for myself. I am doing this on behalf of my party. Point blank. So he made it clear that whatever he said at that point in time was still subject to the ratification of his party. That was very important. That was somebody at that point in time who had already spent 23 years in prison. Talk about party supremacy. We don't need to go too far. One of the best organized parties in Africa, or in Nigeria, I don't want to make a large claim, would be Unity Party of Nigeria under Awolowo. Because there was cohesion. There was party supremacy. Although, no question that the leader of the party, Chief Awolowo, loomed large, but notwithstanding, there was a very strong cohesion within the party. I'm sure, we have PRP too with Malam Aminu Kano. And
that's not to say it didn't happen with the National Party of Nigeria as well, even though the national chairman of the party seemed overbearing at the time.
But I agree with you. I didn't mention MPN for some reasons, basically, because I was talking about, I'm not talking about the second best. I was looking at examples of some of the finest that we have had in the continent and the country. I don't want to go too large in the continent. So, but today, you don't really have that. What you have today is a complete and utter chaos and total mess of political parties in Nigeria. And I don't care whether you're whether you're APC, PDP, Labour Party, or RIP, whatever you call yourself. It's utter chaos in which they only look towards what the president wants.
The question then is, where did we lose that?
Well,
because, what you're saying now, as critical as it is, even go back to that same First Republic that you talked about. Okay. That First Republic produced a vibrant, mutual competition, healthy competition among the different regions, which were governed by different political parties, as you would say. So at what point did we lose? You talked about this party supremacy even in the Second Republic. I think the same thing reflected in the Third Republic, because you couldn't even do anything without the national chairman of the party saying. So at what point did we lose this party supremacy thing?
Well, Ayo, straight away, number one, it's a functionality of the party system that you operate. In the First Republic, we had a parliamentary system. And one of the hallmarks of parliamentary system is a vibrant, legislature. That you have debate, you have official opposition party. You have debate, you have everything.
You have something you're offering to people.
Precisely. You have prime minister, and you have so there will be a lot of debate. And you enjoyed some of the finest debates of our life in the 60s. But by the time we, transmogrified into what we call, presidential system in the 79, then we lost it completely. But then you have a kind of a chief executive in power, basically. So it's no longer a question of bottom up, it's now top down. It speaks to people. Today, look, governors are just like Boy Scouts, they're just like kids in Nigeria. But they're just like, I don't know, it's like a principal talking to school children, or a headmaster talking to school children in Nigeria. It's a fact, whether we like it or not. You have a system in which, look, some of them are very unsettling. I'll give you an example. I remember when Lekki crisis happened, was it a couple of years ago now? One of the most painful aspects, and I'm not saying whether 1 billion people were killed or not. There was tragedy in Lagos at that point in time. The president didn't come to Lagos. Why should I, as a governor of Lagos, now take the photograph of what happened in Lagos to go and meet Mr. President in Abuja? Doesn't have television? Are there no television in the State House for him to see that there was a crisis in Lagos? What is my business as a governor to go and be showing President album? Oh, Mr. President, in case you didn't see, these are the album of the crisis in Lagos State. So that shows you the level to which we have descended in our political system. So straight away to your question, it's a functionality of our political system. It's a functionality of the lack of strong institutions we are talking about. Look, we have mad people in politics, mad people in the United States. Look, Donald Trump is probably more mad than most Nigerian politicians. But one thing that is clear is that they have strong democratic institutions. So what happened to him a couple of weeks ago when people went to Lamago? And they took documents, classified documents, about 4 levels of classifications, that document that had no business being in the government. You can shout that you are being witch hunted. You can shout. But the truth is, the law is there. The law says, as a president, you cannot take certain levels of documentation into your house. And he did that. And for that, he has to go and face the music. That is law. That is rule of law. That is a country where democratic institutions work. But none of them is stronger probably today than Donald Trump himself, but the law is the strongest.
Several things come to mind. Culture. Does culture have a role to play in politics? Culture, they say, is a people's way of life. So where do the people come in all of this? We'll explore that and a lot more when we return in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are with Ademola Abbas, Professor of International Law and Global Affairs Expert. When we talk about culture, stemming from the governor of Lagos going to the president, many may look at it from that prism. But when they say that all of these scenarios playing out cannot be devoid or in isolation of a people's way of life, that it has to reflect either in a politicking, in law, whatever it is. But it was the people that also participated in 1993, the way the political system went at the time. And then it was the same people who were there too in the second, third, first republics, and the way things played out in that parliamentary system, it was the same people. And now people are still there playing their roles. So where do the people come in here? What role do we play? Because if these things are happening where we have strong men and not institutions, could it be that we, the people, have a question to answer?
That's a very loaded question, because I think you've hit the nail on the head. Look, if you go back to the 60s, I earlier spoke about party structure, the political system, the party system we operated. It was a far more inclusive system in terms of representation. So people began to witness and watch on televisions, through transistor radio, politicians debate issues. People were engaged. You remember the wet tear crisis. Government would take a decision, people would say, no, we don't agree with it, because there would be an articulation of that decision. Because government parties at that point in time, they had entrenched policies, and they were able to actually communicate with their people. They took the ideas to the people. They debated with the people. They pushed the ideas. And on every aspect, whether you are AG, you are MPC, you are NCNC, whatever you are, there was proper articulation. There was connection with people. Fast forward, then we had the coup in 1966. Then we had the counter coup. Then we had the beginning of military regime. Now, those who grew from the 60s down to about 79, that after that short time, and down to 80s and early 90s, they never witnessed a culture of debate. Mm-hmm. And that was, if you check Nigerians' temperament, the temperament of an average Nigerian between 1960 and 1966 is radically different from 1970 onward. Because in the 60s, we were debating. So our parents were more cultured. They talked to you in a very civilized manner, and so on and so forth. But because you and I don't know, I am in my early 50s now. Those who were born late 69, late 60s, towards the end and early 70s, we never witnessed that. You wake up in the morning and what you see is that somebody decreed that. So there was our culture of civility began to wane. So what you then had was militocracy. I decree, I did this, fierceness, and boots on the street. And that began to emasculate the people's psychology. We became traumatized. Because suddenly we didn't see the military as people who defend their nation. We see them as embodiments of oppression on the street. Because if there's a crisis, when you send soldiers there, even till Nigeria today, if you send a police contingent, people just want to send a soldier. It's a different thing entirely. So people have been consistently brutalized, politically. So in terms of political culture, we have dwindled a lot. Then combine economy with it. Up until 10, 15 years ago, Nigerians didn't struggle for bread. We didn't struggle so much even though there was austerity, there would be debate. Should we take SAP? Shouldn't we take SAP and this and that? People were still engaged with their political structures. But in the last 15, 20 years, everything has gone bananas at the end of the day. So the culture has brutalized the people. The people have become completely weakened now to the extent that they just look at politicians as their only means of survival.
So you don't think that, so you don't think that the National Assembly, the debates at the National Assembly carry any such similarity or semblance of the debates you are talking about?
The answer is absolutely not. Totally not. Because, look, I don't want to, sound very irrational here. But the truth is, when I look at National Assembly, and I don't mean to be insulting to anybody, I just remember the guy Fordo's poem long ago when he called it, he used the term cabinet of fluke for a particular government. And you begin to talk about an assembly of flukes, I'm sorry to say. Because how can you be in a country and you call yourself legislators, whether you're in the House of Rep or you're in the Senate, and you are in a country in which you have human beings hijacked, kidnapped, just because you're in a train, and it's as if nothing has happened to the country. You have people in Sambisa Forest as if nothing has happened to the country. What kind of laws are you making? What kind of laws are you making that the Accountant General of the country it's rumored or alleged to have stolen between 80 or 100 billion naira, and you are sitting there quietly. The only reason you are sitting is because as a senator, you are taking 36 million naira every month from the coffers of the country.
So based on this critical loss of value from the 60s and 70s to this current generation now, how should we begin to interrogate the candidates who are positioning themselves, to take leadership positions in 2023?
Fantastic question. Look, and that's why I began by saying earlier on that saying that you want to respect, one of the things that Mr. Buhari said was that, we want Nigerians to know that we respect them, and we will show that in the next 6 months. Number one, you don't need to tell me that I respect you. If I respect you, or if you respect me, I will see that you respect me. So I'm sorry, Mr. President got it fatally wrong, that you want Nigerians to know that you respect them. No, you don't respect Nigerians. If you respect Nigerians, you won't lock their children out of universities for 7 months when your children are graduating in foreign lands. If you respect Nigerians, you will not owe foreign airlines, which ordinary Nigerians use, not private jets that you and your cohort use, only for the CBN governor to wake up one day and insult our intelligence by releasing half of the money they wrongly held anyway, and telling the nation that, we were trying to organize an orderly exit of what is that nonsense, orderly exit of fund. You owe somebody, you pay them. You don't wait until they start forcing your people to go and take flight from Benin Republic, from Togo, from Ghana, to go overseas, for goodness sake. And you say you respect Nigerians. No, sorry, you don't show that you respect me by just allowing me to vote for who I want to vote for. And by the way, Mr. President is saying that Nigerians will know and they will appreciate us in the next 6 months. You've been there for 80 years almost. So you are waiting for 6 months, for the last 6 months, for me to appreciate that you've been there for the last 8 years. So all this kind of thing is, you just have to put that at the back of our mind. But now back to your question, when you have that at the back of your mind, how do we begin to engage? Who do we look for? That's why I said that it's already a fait accompli. Because maybe if they have controlled, if they have criminalized vote buying heavily, if they have heavily sanctioned it, if they have lowered how much you need to pay to pick forms, maybe you'll have had much better candidates coming out. So now allowing a bunch of people we might not really want, I'm just saying generally, to now go to the poll and now emerge, and you're not saying you're going to control, it's a fait accompli already. So what I'm saying, at that point in time, then what can we do? Well, we just have to make the best out of the evils that we have at the end of the day. So you have to be looking for who looks for your best interest. When I was coming this morning, I think Mr. Peter Obi was saying that something like he went on a tour of studying energy. And he said something important that if he didn't solve it within the party, that he would step down. I hope that if he wins, or whoever wins, whoever made that kind of pledge, if the person doesn't step down, they should force the person out. Because in this same government, why I didn't buy too much, in this same country, somebody said before, it's a serving minister today, even the serving president once said that if you cannot solve the problem within 5 months, you have 5 years. All these kinds of just gibberish. People say what they wanted to say. We've seen a politician who said that during our own government, students will spend 4 years in school. 4 years is becoming 6 years at the end of the day. So it's difficult to hold Nigerian politicians to book. So, and it leaves people with very little that they can do. But notwithstanding, get your PVC, go out and do whatever investigation, whatever study you will do to make sure that whoever you are voting for will be at least somebody that has a semblance of what you hope to achieve in your lifetime.
There are different dynamics that will play out in these elections, that are entirely new, that we've not experienced. They call it movement of what's going on. Lots of young people on the social media getting their voices heard. Many think that when the chips are down, they will also come out there and vote. Many also hope that will happen. And then you have the scenario where you have different candidates from different parties who seem to be enjoying this momentum going into election. They say, look, we haven't seen this in a while. We don't know how this will pan out. Will there be a second ballot or not? Then you have the biometric voter accreditation system by INEC, which they're also going to introduce for the general election, not off-cycle election. So several factors, ingredients in this equation that we can't exactly say how this will play out at the moment. After all, they tell you 24 hours in politics is a long time, let alone 5-6 months. So as much as you want people to get their PVCs, we don't know what will happen.
Let me respond to those three things very quickly. Number one, starting with the youths. We're having record numbers of registration and youth interest in politics. But I'm just praying, and we have said that on this program so many times, I'm just hoping that time there'll be no ASU strike, or suddenly, because ASU strike is continuing now. Imagine if this goes on now for the next 3, 4, 5 months, and suddenly, when election comes around, you release students back to the schools. You disenfranchise them. Because somebody who's studying in Anambra or in Enugu, who is registered in Lagos, is not going to leave school, having missed 9 months or 10 months, just to come and vote. At that point in time, their focus will be, just let me finish before they go on strike again. And because the strike will happen again, at that point in time, you will disenfranchise the same youths that are struggling today. And that is where ASU has to be strategic. ASU has a critical role to play in 2023 dispensation. And that is how it conducts its strike, that it will conduct, unfortunately, in terms of enfranchising students. That's number one.
Wouldn't that be manipulative?
It's not manipulative at all. That's not manipulative. It's saying that, look, you've been on this battle for a long time.
Yeah.
Myself, I'm sure you said you went through ASU strikes and that. It's going to go. But we may just have an opportunity now in our lifetime to say, you know what? If we vote in a right candidate, and I'm not nominating any particular candidate, we might just be able to get to cross this particular Rubicon eventually. So if strategically you think, you know what, I can see students registering massively. If I continue this strike for the next 4 or 5 months, they might not be able to actually cast their vote. If I'm saying, you know what, let me take a backseat for now and allow things to run, that is not manipulative, that's being strategic. That's number one. Number two, you talk about beavers. Fantastic idea. Beavers is, if you remember very well, Articles 30 and Article 38, brilliant of the guidelines itself. Article 30 talks about no telephone in polling booth and this and that, which is okay, so that people are no longer intimidated in that sense that, you're going to take, what are you voting for? I voted for you, I've collected your money. They are stopping that.
There's a new strategy though.
Precisely, it's a new strategy, so we hope that is going to be. But we've seen some semblance of it in Osun, Ekiti, and I think Anambra, and so I think to that extent, we can be marginally, I'd say marginally and cautiously hopeful. And I'm hoping also that there will be no BBN, Big Brother Nigeria, during the voting time, because that sucks the interest of the youth like nothing else. Whenever that thing comes on, you'll forget that BVC, so I think they have to go and work on that. But on a more serious note, is the fact that at least we have an opportunity now, and I agree with you, Chamberlain, on that. I've almost become pessimistic about the electoral cycles in Nigeria, because there's too much noise, too much, hot air and this and that, and everything just comes crashing again. Politicians will come and make many promises and they will never fulfill. But something tells me that 2023 might just be slightly different from what we've ever witnessed. If not by the record of number of youth, and I'm hoping they are going to translate that into actual voting, not just being on social media.
Yeah.
But at least also because it seems that the country has got to a state now that we are at a tipping point, that we are telling ourselves, look, if we don't do this one right now, we might just go into places.
To add to the president's position that he's going to be allow every vote to count, can we demand that is seen in the conduct of delegated authority who are going to participate in the coming elections? And what are your expectations to see the reflection of the president's position in the conduct of delegated authority, i.e. security agencies and INEC?
Well, thank you so much for that question, because when I was speaking earlier on, I did mention that, when the president talked about not allowing people to be intimidated, we have to look at those who are intimidating people in the past. If it's for you to say on the one hand, you don't want people, and he clarified it that he doesn't want people who have personal resources and this and that, maybe money bags and what have you. I don't know how they want to achieve that. But also we know that the other spectrum, which you've referred to, is the role being played by security agencies, who are obviously used, and those are not personal resources, those are state resources. And the government itself, I'm not talking about Buhari's government per se, most governments in power have been guilty of that. We've seen cases in Nigeria in which governments in power actually forbade, or they made it impossible for certain candidates to go out on the voting day, including governors. And I know governors that were actually locked in their own government houses, that they couldn't go out to vote at that point in time. So we know all those. So we're hoping that the government will match its words with action when the time comes.
If I could just pick up on that for a bit, when hoping that will happen, but if we look at how certain things have happened, particularly with the president and his speeches and comments, we know that he's given the riot act to the army several times, shoot down these folks, put an end to insurgency, make sure this doesn't happen. But we don't get to see the requisite or commensurate action on the part of the armed forces. I stand corrected on that one. But we have also seen all those persons, some of them, his party men, come here and tell us, look, the style of the president is that if he gives you a task, he likes you to go ahead and finish. He trusts you. He gives you the free hand to operate. I mean, I think this is one of the recent governments where we haven't seen ministerial change like 2 or 3 times in recent times, attesting to his style. So if we say, wait a minute, so should he then breathe on the neck of those people? Isn't that going to be holding our breath for far too long?
Well, you see, let me start with the fact that he hasn't made a lot of changes in the ministerial positions. We cannot assume that was because that was done to his...
trusting them?
Is trusting them or is... Look, in politics, you talk about interests. Basically, it depends on where his interest lies. That's because he actually changed a couple of ministers, as you know. But look, all that be, you're absolutely right. The president might say, okay, his style might be, I give you a job, go and do it. But then we woke up, was it this morning? I think this morning or yesterday, when Governor Autumn came out and said that when he was talking to some security operatives, they said, the federal government said we should not kill terrorists. We should not go after them. So, now, the federal government has not come out to deny that allegation. That's coming from a sitting governor, by the way, in this country. And I don't think Governor Autumn will make such a light.
I'm not sure if it's the same one that Mr. Gabashew responded to, where he says that, well, if the governor was that forthright and bold, he should name the names of the military persons or whoever
I haven't read
told him that.
I haven't read that, Chamberlain. But if I read that, I would have said, when the same government itself said that they named the names of those who are supporting terrorists, have they published the names? So that is crappy. They shouldn't tell us that. But I've not read that. Anyway, whether you are Gabashew or they say whatever they want to say. But what is important is for the governor to say, to straight away indict the federal government and say, I was told by people that you sent that we should not engage terrorists. So what I'm saying is that it is all too easy. The president might come out and say one thing. The question is, maybe not him saying another thing entirely. The question is, what do his aides? What do they do with that? What information do they? It's not. Back to your question earlier on. I've always said, we seem to be looking for an angel for president. When you look at the candidates parading themselves today, no. I've always asked myself, for me, the golden test is, who do I want to govern me from 2023? It doesn't have to be the best, but it has to be somebody who can bring together the best resources of this country, the best talents of this country, and harness them. The president is somebody who gives directives. He can't do everything, or she can't do everything by himself or by herself. But you must be able to appoint the best ministers. Who of them can identify the best talents in our country? That's number one. Number two, when political pressures come, and they will come to the president, who of them has enough capacity to withstand that? Because that is where everything falls apart in Nigeria.
Wouldn't you say we are over-centralizing the issues? Many times when we're looking at these issues, we're looking at the president. We're looking at the federal government. You said that earlier that the governors are like kids, something like that. But they have...
PDP chairman.
I tried not to make that reference, Chamberlain. But it's critical to look at that sector as well. Because I have said this before, you may validate it. The president doesn't have indigents. He has citizens. And citizens are the indigents that live in the different states, and residents and all of that. So in my head, I'm wondering, what should we be looking at that level as well? There's so much power with the president, and that's understandable. But that's not to say that the governors are completely powerless themselves. So going back to Chamberlain's inquisition the other time about what the citizens need to do, just where do we go from there?
Ayo, straight away. We talked about the role of legislatures. We keep forgetting one thing. The parliament of any country is the most democratic of all the organs of government. Parliamentarians are the only ones that are directly elected in Nigeria. And they are accountable to the people, apart from the governor, who is the chief executive of the state. You don't elect ministers, they are appointed. You don't elect commissioners, they are appointed. You only appoint the governor and the deputy, the president and his vice, but all members of parliament are elected by the people, so they are responsible to the people. So when you talk about what can people do, people themselves, Nigerians cannot do anything except through their parliamentarians. And falling short of that, then you look towards the civil society organizations, the CSOs, when they are not busy chasing dollars and whatsoever from foreign donors and stuff like that. That is the point. In those days, CSOs will fight for the people when the government failed people. But today, what do CSOs do anyway? Look, just like nuns.
Let me quickly get this one in, and it's in relation to Ayo's question. There are many political commentators who have said, look, things as they are presently constituted cannot work. Even if you gave Nigeria to the Pope would not be able to revive this sleeping giant. Which of the candidates, on parade has that political will to implement the all-important restructuring that commentators believe is the silver bullet to bring Nigeria out of the doldrums?
The straight answer is all of them have it, none of them has it. In other words, all of them have it if they have something to work with. Look, they're not all idiots, make no mistake. Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu had been senator in this country, had been governor of Lagos State, had been a leader of APC. Mr. Atiku had been vice president of Nigeria, he was in custom, Mr. Obi had been governor of Anambra. They all have their pedigrees, make no mistake about that. They all have their qualifications, academic or non-academic, political or non-political, they all have it. But I think when people say even if Pope comes in, it will fail, they're referring to the fact that if you do not have certain constitutional amendments, A, to whittle the powers of the president that we have today, B, to elevate the powers of the governor over certain issues, C, to make sure local governments function more effectively than just outposts of the federal and the state government today. If you don't have all those things in place, it doesn't matter who you bring in. It will fail. It's just like when we were talking about corruption, when Babangida was there, Chief Bola, your blessed memory, said something important. He said, if you leave God with IBB for 5 minutes, he will corrupt him. And I never forget that. All Bolagi was saying at that point in time was that IBB's government was so corrupt that without having the political will to fight that corruption, it doesn't matter who you made the sire of corruption at that point in time in Nigeria. So all the candidates for me, none of them is evil, and none of them also is a saint. But the question is, if any of them comes in, what are they going to work with? Is that the constitution that is effective, that is going to guarantee equity and fairness for all Nigerians? Is that in place? Is that constitutional provisions that will whittle down the power of the president and stop making governors behave like kindergartens? Those are things that we need.
Well, interesting. We need to go. But on a lighter note, Buki, I keep wondering when they say give it to the Pope first. Let's see what he will do. They can say if you give it to the Pope.
Don't forget that the Pope has a system.
What's wrong with people? If you give it to give him first. Let's see what he'll do with it. And we'll take it from there when we give it to him.
Answers the consequences of that.
Adebola Abbas, the professor of international law and the global affairs expert. Always a pleasure to have you on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.